Ever feel like your team is running on fumes? You're rolling out new initiatives, launching campaigns, and offering valuable member benefits. Your team is hustling, wearing multiple hats, creating engagement opportunities, and doing everything they can to deliver value. But here's the thing. Some things land, some don't. Some members engage, but others, they tune out. Or worse, they never notice. Meanwhile, your team is stretched thin. You're left wondering, should we be doing this differently? Good news, you don't have to do it all. Let's talk about building your dream team. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Association Amplified podcast. Today we're diving into what it takes to run a small but mighty team. Whether you have a handful of staff or a full department, the key isn't doing everything yourself. It's knowing when to lean into your team's expertise, when to bring in outside help, and how to build the right partnership to make it all work smoothly. Today, we're honored to be joined by Christy Devanche back onto the podcast. Thanks for being here, Christy.
I'm back. I don't know why you had me back, but here I am. Let's go.
Well, it went so well the first time. There's no way that we couldn't have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, well, it's pretty exciting. And what, viewers at home don't know is that it was about 35 degrees in here last time. So now that it's minus 30, we can enjoy some cooler temps here in the studio.
Yeah, for context for everyone is that the studio that we're in is notoriously not necessarily the most insulated of rooms. And the day that we shot that show, the air conditioning wasn't working in this space, so it was a bit of a sauna session / intellectual conversation.
Yeah, it got sweaty. I had no idea what I was talking about by the end, but that's what editing's for. So,
well, anyway, it's great to have you here. I think this is going to be a really useful conversation for associations because it's just so common. And frankly, it's that associations are often just stretched thin in terms of the resources they have, not just in budget, but the staff, right? You often have leaders that are actually working in multiple areas for cross department. You'll have a communications and marketing person, or you have a membership and education person, and it's just any combination. I mean, we've seen lots of different kind of combinations, and sometimes you just go, oh, you poor thing, like this is quite a lot for you to be juggling. And the teams themselves that make up of those departments can be quite small too. And you're really trying to be effective and deliver to members and represent an industry with not exactly the workforce that may be required to, put the best work out there and make a big impact and serve that mission. And frankly, this is something that's not really unique even to associations. Even companies such as ours, there's always so much that you can put in your strategic planning, right? Or try and knock out into a quarter. And you're quickly going to run into what do we really have capacity to get done? And where does it make sense to bring in some help in terms of hiring a company that has some sort of specialty? Maybe a really good place to start is actually just focusing back in on the team. And I would just love to hear your opinion on this, on when a situation like this arises, as far as your team goes, where do you kind of start? Where's your kind of philosophy on how you navigate the decision to invest in your team or find solutions within your team to what needs to be done versus going outside of your team and possibly hiring another company to help?
Yeah, so that's a really good point that you made about association teams and how they're often quite small. It can be true, as you said, for a company like ours too. We just don't always have all of the resources that we want when we look at all of the goals that we have. But I think when you start your strategic planning or you're laying out what you want to do in the year and you've identified those goals, look first at the team that you have. Identify the strengths that they have. How can they contribute to those goals you want to achieve? And make sure that you're communicating with them. Do they understand what your expectations are? Are you aligned in how you're going to achieve those goals? And then are you giving them the space to do what they do best? I think for me personally, I work best when my leader communicates to me clearly what the goal is, what their expectations are, and then they give me the space to go out and achieve that goal. And that's often the way that I try to treat my team too. I give them as clear direction as I can. I make sure we're aligned on what needs to be done, and then go do it.
Yeah, I think that's really solid advice. If the leader isn't creating clear expectations with their team, then it's going to be that much harder for them to actually see that through. And you're not necessarily going to get what you want out of your team without setting those proper expectations and making sure that they really understand what you're asking of them. When it comes to delegating that work, how do you navigate those touch points so you're not necessarily micromanaging them, and you're really empowering them to try and take ownership of what they're trying to do? While some of us may feel some sort of anxiety around, well, what if it goes off the rails? What if they don't deliver on what I want? I'm curious about your personal philosophy when it comes to micromanagement delegation.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky thing for every leader. Nobody's like, yes, it's me. I want to micromanage my team. I love being a micromanager. Nobody sees themselves that way or wants to be that way. And I think the best road away from micromanagement is trust. If you truly trust the people you're working with to get their job done and to do their job well, you won't need to micromanage them, or you won't feel that compulsion to micromanage them. And if you're in a position where you're like, well, I don't trust them, then I think the first thing you need to do is look at why, and have you truly set them up for success? Have you truly been clear about what you expect from them? Do they have the tools they need to succeed? And if you've answered all those questions and you've done everything you possibly can and you still don't trust somebody, then you have another issue there that you need to deal with. But the ideal scenario is that you have somebody you can trust, you've empowered them to do their job well, and then you can get out of their way and let them do it. And when you do that, you're really going to see the best results possible from somebody. A person who feels trusted, has clear expectations, has the tools they need to succeed, they're going to do great work from you. That's what I've seen time and time again.
Yeah, I really love that approach. That what I heard there is like you're really actually doing a bit of a self-analysis as much as you are doing an analysis just on them. And perhaps that is really a blind spot for some folks, which is fair. Leadership is something that's not necessarily so straightforward to navigate, but I'm a big believer in a little bit of self-reflection is helpful in multitude areas in life, and I think leadership with a team is absolutely one of those areas. And then you also mentioned there about, okay, once you're honest with yourself about am I doing everything I can to empower this person, to enable them to carry out their work? Can I go through and check the boxes that it isn't just a trust issue, and why is there a trust issue? And then then you can take appropriate steps. Leadership, I think, is one of those areas where you certainly can be the boss if you want to. That's an approach. My personal viewpoint is that life's too short to be the boss, and it's a lot more fulfilling to enable people to have their own wins and see that personal growth. And that really does come down to guiding folks, and mistakes will happen and you have to be willing to accept that. It's just, what is the category of mistake that is happening? Is it just pure negligence, right? Is a lack of care? Or is it something that's brand new that the person's taking on, and there's going to be some lumpies and bumpies, as I say, along the way. But if we can take a step back and see that the individual is really doing their best possible effort going forward and being thoughtful with their work, then that's something that goes a long way in terms of having some trust, if you will, that they're on the path to improving and growing as an individual.
Yeah, definitely. And you touched on something there about like everybody's going to make mistakes and there's, a trajectory of growth for everybody. And I think when I reflect on that, what I think about is feedback. And one of the most important functions you have as a leader is being able to effectively share feedback with someone and also to receive feedback from your team, checking in with them regularly. Okay, I saw in this project something went wrong. This is what I observed. Is there more I could have done to support you? Is there anything we could approach differently the next time? And making sure it's always a two-way street. You're not just always outputting feedback, but you're receiving it as well. And also being really thoughtful when you deliver feedback, making sure that everybody understands I'm giving you feedback today because I want to set you up to succeed the next time. This is what I observed. And having a conversation, not just a kind of download of here's everything that went wrong and what you should have done differently.
There's kind of like that saying within leadership. Usually it's like a founder position of like make yourself as irrelevant as possible, which I actually think is like a fairly healthy mindset because it kind of checks the person into making sure that they're actually building a well-functioning organization opposed to being the organization being reliant on their, thoughts and whims on the day to day. And that's how you really have something that could stand the test of time. And especially in the association space, there's a real legacy there of these long-standing associations, and it's an important mindset to have even in emerging new sectors and industries that are popping up. If you take a step back, it's really about empowering your team with the guidance that if something was to happen to you, right? Maybe you're going to the Bahamas for the month or something like that. We'll make it nice is that everyone's really clear in terms of not only what's important in the day to day, but really what's the important role of their function as a department, right? What are they trying to aim at the end of the day? And I think that's actually ends up being the missing piece in some cases is that team members could understand kind of what their daily tasks are, but if they're not really thinking about like the why and the values of the departments, let's say, then they're not going to be able to necessarily think for themselves. There's still that dependency there.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you've, micromanaged and structured everything down to a really task type of level, then people can just kind of lose sight of why they're doing what they're doing. And it's really important that as you're communicating with people, they understand the overall goal. Why are we doing all of these tasks? What are we trying to achieve together? And that does set people up to think and maybe suggest a task be approached a different way or spot places where we're being inefficient with our time. And that's incredibly important for having a high functioning team and for succeeding. And if a leader can't effectively communicate with their team about what the goals are and why we're trying to accomplish them, you will set up a situation where you end up just kind of always micromanaging all the details because nobody knows the reason why.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Going to the top of when we started this conversation is that, inevitably the team could understand what's important on it in terms of what their daily tasks are, their responsibilities, and you can empower them with the knowledge of like that North Star, if you will, of like, what is it that we're really trying to achieve as a team. You kind of know that you arrive there when your team is proactively trying to give you feedback about things that they're seeing. Because as a leader, to think that you're the oracle, you have all the answers is, in my opinion, a little bit silly, right? Like if you're surrounding yourself with really passionate people that care about their work, and they're embedded in that work, they're going to come up with things that you're not necessarily seeing and being able to give you feedback or generate some ideas that perhaps you didn't come from, especially if they're working on that really tactical level, and they can contribute intellectually to what you're laddering up to, whatever the ideal is. We're trying to improve the value proposition of membership, right? That's what we're really focused on this department. So if you have a team that's contributing original ideas, maybe a good sign actually that you have a really functioning team is that they're able to bring forward ideas that maybe even go past the disciplines that you currently have, but someone's raising their hand saying, hey, I think we have a gap here. We need to be delivering on X, Y, and Z competency, but we don't have it in the building.
And that will happen. I think over the course of my career, there's been many instances where this great idea comes along and everyone's excited and wants to see it brought into the world, but you realize that you just don't have the in-house competencies to deliver it. You have all the right things in terms of people coming up with the great idea. You've got the mission and the goal outlined clearly, and you're like, but we're missing this one core piece we know we need, for example, an amazing video that's going to really bring this thing to life, but we don't have anybody here who can do that. That's where you start to look for the right partner to help you fill those gaps in your team. So if there's an area of expertise or something more technical that needs to be done and you don't have that competency in-house, identifying that is the first step. And that's where you start to look for the right partner to outsource to.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think this is something that often comes up, especially in the association space. And because of governance, which is absolutely important, what you end up seeing is that there's this fear of taking on new, right? And one of the kind of doors that association executives go through is like, well, this needs to be turned into really this kind of what ends up being a Everest of a project, because we need to fully explore and analyze and make sure we're doing our due diligence, which again is all good. But what's happening there is that because you're saying we need to do this, you're really making something that could potentially be actually quite an easy lift by partnering with someone outside. That, you still want to check those boxes that you're being responsible, that the things that are important to your mission, your members, are being taken into account. But at the end of the day, you don't need to take something like implementing a new piece of technology and turn it into we've seen some technologies being implemented in associations, and it really is like ends up being a 2-year project, right? When is that really actually a good spend, if you will, of your membership dues, right? Or you're working so hard for those sponsorship dollars as non-dues revenue, is taking, say, implementing an AMS, for example, something familiar to everyone. You got to think about the cost of implementing that technology. And also in the background is your members and their experience, right? And what's the true cost of not delivering on something that's going to give a real improvement to people if it takes you 2 years to implement?
Yeah, entirely. I mean, you look for an outsourced partner who has more experience than you do. So if they've implemented an AMS 200 times with their association partners, they're going to know what all the critical points in the project are. They're going to know what can go wrong. They're going to be able to make a plan and guide you through that in a way that feels easy, as opposed to if you as an internal team, maybe you have somebody who has some idea of what needs to happen, but they're not an expert. They haven't been through it before, and you're kind of flying blind. So which option do you want to go with? The flying blind and it's going to take 2 years, or partner with an expert who's done it 200 times and can guide us through this in 3 months, 6 months, a quarter, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And something I could kind of add to that is, if you are engaging with solution providers and you're going into those sales calls, your mindset will really determine what you're going to get out of it. It's an opportunity not to endear the person that's trying to sell you something per se, just to take a little bit of a negative approach. Let's contrast with like the positive, is that when you're going into that call and you're doing a discovery with someone, that's a really good opportunity to ask them questions about what they think is important and what do they feel people that they talk to often knew about the solution that they provide, right? Because then you're really gonna open up the conversation to, is this person really thinking about the problem that they're trying to solve, or are they someone that's just trying to sell something, for instance? So if you really embrace that discovery, it's a really good opportunity to actually engage with the other person and really flush out if they're really thinking intelligently, that they're going to be able to provide something that can deliver on what's important to you, you know? And I think a really good place to start, which could potentially put them on their heels a little bit, which I think is healthy, is what do you think is important to make have this solution be executed properly, and where do you think people go wrong? You're really going to start to understand how thoughtful these folks are versus, getting their sale done, for instance.
Yeah, I'll have to write that question down and be ready next time I'm on with a client now that you've given them that little tip, Marcus. But no, it's true. I mean, if a client did ask me that question with regards to any of the services we provide, I would have no trouble guiding them through, what are the kind of places things could go wrong and how we can best position the way we work with them in order to make sure that it's successful.
Okay, so we said a lot there. I want to flip what we've been saying a little bit, and let's talk about what should not be outsourced or being provided externally from your team. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I don't think I would go to a vendor and ask them, what should we communicate to members this year? What should our goals be this year? Your job is to set the strategic direction, understand what's important to your membership base, know what the core values of your organization are, and all of that needs to live with your team. The key strategic elements of your plan and understanding that plan need to live with your own team. And the person who's going to work with your outsource partner needs to understand this on a really deep and foundational level. That person is going to need to be able to communicate with your vendor or your partner that you're outsourcing to about why you're working together. What are the goals? How are we measuring success together? Because if your vendor or partner doesn't understand that at the outset of the project, they probably aren't going to be able to bring you as far as fast as a vendor partner who does know why you're working together, what it is you're trying to achieve, how you're measuring it. That vendor partner wants to make you look good. That's their job. So if you can set them up for success in doing that job, you're going to have a great relationship.
Yeah, it's well said. I mean, that is kind of a good sign that you are working with someone that's worth building a partnership with, is that if they're looking for those wins and they're invested in terms of really delivering for you, then you've made at least part of the equation of a good selection. And, it's funny, in some ways, the relationship isn't that different than you're running your own team, right? Is like, it's all about setting clear expectations, good communication. They know what's important to you and what they're looking to deliver to you. There needs to be oversight and direction.
Yes. So definitely, as you touched on, working with an outsourced partner isn't that different than working with your own team. You really want that to feel like an extension of your own team. And the way to do that is to make sure that your outsourced partner understands what you need from them. And the more direction and clarity that you can give them, the better things are going to flow in your relationship. So again, coming back to communication, as you touched on, the clearer you can be about what your timelines are, why your timelines exist, what you're trying to achieve, how you're measuring your success. These are all things your vendor partner needs to know. As the person on the partner side of the relationship that's serving a client, sometimes a client can come in and say, oh, I need this done in a month. And I'll run around rallying all the resources, making sure that we can meet their deadline, only to find out later, actually, it was a pretty soft deadline and they might not be able to give me the information I need in order to meet that 1 month deadline. So from my side, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions to try to get to know you better, understand your needs. So when you say that, oh, I need this done in a month, and I say, oh, how come? What's driving that need? And you explain, oh, well, we just had really hoped to get it done by the end of the quarter, but if it extended into next quarter, that would be fine. Okay, now I understand. If you say, oh, I have an event at the end of the month and I need to show this video at the event. Okay, now I know we're working to a hard deadline. And I'm going to work back from that hard deadline and tell you every single milestone we need to hit together in order to get to that deadline. so that we're both set up for success. And if you say, oh no, I'm actually going to be on vacation that whole week in the middle, okay, great, more information. I can rejig my timeline. But the better we're communicating together, the better set up for success we are.
I think that's really well said. And an interesting note on that dynamic is that unlike your team, you don't have to be worried about telling your vendor partner how to do the thing. Like, that's the advantage of partnering with someone, is because their core competency is getting this specific discipline done, and everything that's goes into having that output, whatever that output is, right? That's a whole burden taken off of your shoulders, opposed to your in-house team where like you got to manage that. Like, you got to make sure that you have a sense of what their discipline is and that they're following through and have a good workflow, that the quality is good, that they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing. Like, is the allocation of time for all those different tasks, or are they like totally out of whack, you know? And it's a team. You're really signing up to manage a team to get whatever that output the team is doing together. Where opposed to if you are working with a solutions provider, is it really the best case scenario is that you have a single point of contact that is assigned to you. They feel like an extension of your team. There's a bunch of magic happening, behind the scenes, and you get to just speak with them on a high level about what's important to you, have that clear communication, and they're going to make sure all the tasks, all the work, the knowing of how, the sausage is made is happening behind the scenes, which really relieves a lot of time from you to be able to get that output, whatever it may be.
Yeah, totally. I could feel us building towards the sausage metaphor there. Entirely. Yes, this is the magic of working with an expert, is that you don't have to get involved in all of that detail. You can download the vision of what you want to achieve, what your goals are, and they can grab that information, and then it comes out the other side of the black box as ideally a fully baked thing that you can just take and run with. And yeah, you don't need all that skill, all that expertise, finagling with all the timelines in the middle. They're covering that. And yeah, that can be, I think, a really magical experience for the client, or that's certainly what we try to deliver to clients is, we understood what you wanted and we delivered it up to you on a silver platter. So I think that's what associations should be thinking about when they're considering working with an outsourced partner, is that partner could make it so much easier to get to your end goal and, possibly get you further faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we mentioned two things so far when it comes to really tips for associations when they're looking for some sort of solutions provider. And one was, hey, embrace that discovery call. Don't be afraid to ask questions and make them as selfish as possible, really, because that's what you're there for, right? Is you want to make sure that your needs are being accounted for. And if people can't answer it in the moment, then, it's a good sign that maybe you need to keep talking to folks. The second one was what we mentioned was really, it's a good relationship if you can have, say, a single point of contact, right? Because it just makes your life so much easier. And it shows you that there is one sign that they can be well organized, right? You don't want to be working with a solutions provider where you're talking to Sarah and Bob and Phil, and you're the one trying to end up managing this thing. That's not what you're signed into this partnership for. You're really looking at getting someone that is both managing the output as well as, delivering it. So with that said, what would be some of those other areas that you would recommend specifically for associations to look out for when they're looking to doing some outsourcing?
I think that an association needs to understand that they don't necessarily operate exactly the same as a typical business does. And there are a wealth of vendors and partners out there that specialize in working with associations and are going to have a much better understanding of how an association functions, what their specific needs are, and how to really tailor their work to their space. So if I was at an association, I would definitely start with those vendors or partners who specialize in the association space.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. And if you've worked in the association slash nonprofit space for an extended period of time, it'd be one of those like, fish and water type things. But it is very true that the association space is quite unique than, say, a regular business. And it's a whole world to understand what it really means to engage with members. What is the importance of non-dues revenue, and how does that balance with governance and the mission? And so having a provider that is uniquely aware of what's important to associations, how they work, has a long history of delivering to associations is going to go in a long way for you to be able to kind of speak the same language, and for lack of a better term, for them to get you.
Yeah, your partner needs to be able to kind of step back from that solution that they're trying to deliver to you and remember who it is that you serve. So if you're at an association, you have a membership of some form or another, and your partner needs to understand that and understand that you are there to serve your members. So if you encounter a partner who just doesn't seem to be able to get their head around that, that's kind of an immediate red flag that this probably isn't somebody that you want to work with, or that's going to be able to serve your needs long term. And really, at the end of the day, your job as an association is to deliver value to your members, and your vendor partner needs to be able to help you achieve that goal. And if they're going to do it effectively, they need to know that, and they need to be able to put themselves in the shoes of your member and understand what their needs are. And those vendors that really specialize in associations, that's what they're best at.
So I think that was a pretty easy one. I think everyone could kind of wrap their head around that. Is there any less obvious red flags that you would put out there for folks to take into consideration?
Red flags. So I think, anytime I'm investigating a potential partnership, I want to be able to clearly understand things like pricing models and who I'll be working with. I think sometimes, like we did talk about a single point of contact and how important it is to know who your point of contact is. I would be hesitant to work with a vendor or partner who wasn't willing to introduce me at some point in the sales process to the person I would be working with, or even some of the broader team. And even if it's just that that information is sort of available to you on their website or via the proposal, you can see sort of some information about how the team is made up. I think if you can't find that, that is a little bit concerning. And yeah, like when you enter into that partner relationship, your point of contact is so important to how that relationship unfolds and to how the work is delivered. So making sure that you have a good, I don't know, vibe is the word coming into my mind, but it doesn't feel quite right. But that when you meet that person, they feel good to you and they feel like somebody who's going to understand your needs and deliver a quality product to you. It's really important. And I think a good sort of sales team or salesperson will be very willing to introduce you to the delivery team in at least one meeting so you can understand who you'll be working with in the future. That's something I would really want to know if I was on the association side.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really fantastic point. In fact, the last contract that I signed, I was working with the founder through their sales process. I was pretty interested in what they had to offer. It was going to augment what my team does in a way that was really going to take a huge lift off of me. And I get to just get this deliverable from them. Huge payoff for me, but I knew that their ability to really meet my expectations in terms of what I wanted was so dependent on the relationship I was going to have with my account manager. So before I agreed to do anything, I said, I'm interested, but I want to meet my account manager before we proceed forward with any sort of agreement. And even though the founder was on the call, I really frankly didn't really let them take any of the questions. I wanted that person to engage with me. And I wasn't, putting them on the red line and, trying to make them sweat or anything. But what I was really trying to do is that just have a normal conversation with them about the work we're going to do. And do I feel really comfortable that this person's actually engaging with me? And are they asking questions to anything that I'm saying that's really, I can tell that they're going through their head about that they're really looking at understanding what my expectations are. And they're thinking about, how can I translate what you're saying into a deliverable that you're really going to be happy with? If it just feels vague and like you feel like you're going to have to be taking the lead in that type of relationship, that would be my red flag that I would, which I think partners up with what you were saying there. You really don't want to be getting into a partnership with a company where you feel like you have to be doing the heavy lifting. I mean, that's why you're handing over the money to them in the first place, right? So the vendors should be making things easier for you, not harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you touched on, when you meet that person, you want to feel like they understand your needs and they can clearly communicate with you how they're going to meet them. And, it really is that account manager, that person who's going to be taking you through that process, who should be able to speak to it with authority.
Yeah, one final note, just because I find it humorous now that I think about it, is like a great account manager, if you're having that, if you get the privilege to go through that experience, is like, because you're signing up for them to take on something that's not a core competency of you, if they could basically keep you in line, like they take how you're trying to verbalize what you want and they're relaying it back to you in a very structured approach, you're working with someone that it's going to be a fruitful relationship, right? Because it means that you have someone that really understands what it takes to take your goal and break it down into something that's attainable. So that's just one tip I wanted to put out as far as when you're feeling out working with outside companies on something. With all that said, what probably should be focused on here is that these solution providers, they're not there to necessarily replace your team, right? Going back to the beginning of the conversation, it's really about filling the gaps in terms of what is, I hope, a well-functioning machine of a team that you're at the helm of. And if you're open to working with partners, you're really able to augment and complement what your team's doing really well. And again, if they're focused not only on what are the tasks that ladder up to what we're trying to get done, but why we're doing it, then everyone should really be on board in terms of, if the solution that you realize is a gap in your team, if everyone understands that we're going to be able to do this per se, whatever this may be. Let's say you're looking to add, some more production value to your events, right? Oh, we get to do that. That isn't a replacement for, say, the folks that are working on the event, right? So take a step back, again, to where we started here, is that, this conversation about finding solution providers, we aren't focused here on how can I replace my team? Because I feel like feelings, just the emotions of that sometimes can be brought into the conversation, right? And inevitably, I think even team members can feel a little bit self-conscious about, well, why are we bringing X, Y, and Z company? Are they here to replace me? And I'll just speak personally here, is like a good selection of a solutions provider, someone that is filling a gap in your team, which hopefully that team is a well-oiled machine. They're great at what they do. They're passionate about what they do. They understand why they do it. And everyone understands that what we're doing could be amplified if we just had this extra piece. Because maybe it makes us work faster. Maybe it makes the output we're working towards greater because we're just missing this skill set. So I think that's something that could also be kind of taken into consideration here when we're thinking about how do you navigate picking someone well, it's like, well, why are you picking them? What's the motivation behind it? It should all ladder up to something that's really complementing the work that you're doing right now. So that would be something that I would highlight for folks to consider. Christy, what do you think are some good examples of a successful partnership with a vendor?
For sure. So to touch on what you were saying in terms of, the vendor you select is complementing the team you already have. Sometimes for me, a client comes with an ask about a project, and it's a project we're capable of delivering. It's a project we want and we're excited to work on. But for some reason, we're going to need some help. And a great example I could explain of this is one of our clients, the Young Presidents Organization, they came to us and they wanted to produce 14 videos about their Global Impact Awards. And the nominees for the videos were located all over the world, in Hong Kong, in Kinshasa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zimbrata, Minnesota, in California, really all over the place. And they had a very tight timeline. So they came to us in October and they wanted all of the videos completed by January because they needed to show them at an event. And based on the budget and the locations, there was no way that we were going to be able to accomplish this project with our own team alone. We needed partners to get it done. And so what we went ahead and did was source local talent in every single city that they wanted to shoot in. We found videographers and producers who could partner with us. And we put together a really tight briefing package. So each crew was briefed in the same way and understood the goal of the client and what we needed to achieve. We set them up for success on the ground. And then we at Worker Bee TV received back all of the footage from these partners that we'd worked with, and we edited all of the videos and put together the final output for our client. This project happened back in, I think it was 2019, but it's still one of the projects as a company that we're most proud of. There's people that we met through that project that I still think about, people who, because it was a global impact project, really are working to try to make our world a better place. And it was such an incredible opportunity for Worker Bee TV to be a part of this project. And if we hadn't been open to the idea of outsourcing or working with vendor partners, we couldn't have done it. We never would have been able to achieve it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it would have been impossible for the organization to be able to pull that off on their own, right?
Yes, yeah. I don't think YPO ever would have considered trying to do this project by themselves. And I know when they brought it to us, they understood that one of Worker Bee TV's unique skill sets, one of our talents, was the ability to remote project manage and source crews in a lot of different locations. They outsourced to us because we have some skills in outsourcing. And we worked so closely with YPO on this project. They attended every briefing meeting with the videographers. They helped us with our final selections of the crews in different locations. So we were all so tightly integrated, us, our client, and then the teams that we were working with on the ground. And that was a big part of why it was so successful.
Is that something that was important to them, that they were in those meetings or working that closely?
Yes, because they had such a specific creative vision for this project. We were working directly with their creative director at YPO. They wanted to be very closely involved and to meet the crews, to help vet the crews. This isn't true for every client on every project we work with. Some clients prefer to be more hands-off. And as we said, they don't need to see how the sausage is made. They just want to eat the sausage. So we work that way too with some clients where they don't have to participate in those briefing meetings or be involved in crew selection. We can manage all of that on our side. But if they want to get in there and they want to be involved, we welcome that collaboration as well.
Yeah, it can't be understated, just like the sheer amount of work that goes into having that kind of output under that kind of a deadline.
Yeah. It was a real sprint, and it definitely stretched and challenged everybody who was involved with the project. But at the end of the day, it was something that we were all incredibly proud of and that we were grateful to have been a part of.
Well, that's amazing, Christy. I think it's a great example of how by YPO in this case, partnering with someone that has all the core competencies that they needed, they were able to achieve something that they really wouldn't have been able to complete just solely on their own. Because in this case, we really knew what we were looking for and were able to pull all the pieces together behind the scenes to make sure to hit that really important deadline. And perhaps more challenging is that it was done to a level that met their expectations. So maybe now would be a good time to just kind of recap what we went over today and really what should the folks be taking away from this conversation.
I think that it's possible to achieve big goals, and outsourcing is a great way of achieving those goals and achieving them more quickly than you might be able to do on your own. And really the first step to doing that is to assess your own team. What skills do you have internally? What are they great at? What can they deliver on already? And then once you understand that, taking a look at what you should be outsourcing. What do you need from an external partner that can fill in those gaps that you have in your team so that you can make it to that end goal? So I think the biggest takeaway here is that even if you have a small team at your association, you can achieve a lot. You can achieve some pretty lofty goals, but you need to be open to the idea of outsourcing and putting together the right team from both inside and outside in order to be able to do that. So the first step that you're going to want to take is looking at the team you already have. What resources do you have internally? What can they do? What are their strengths? What are they great at? Have you set them up for success in achieving the goals that you have? As a next step, look at, okay, if there are gaps, if there are things we can't achieve, what are they and what do we need to outsource in order to get there? And make some decisions about how you can partner with different vendors in order to achieve those goals.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think in some ways that is already familiar with many associations, as the annual conference is such an important staple of many associations' year. You can't do an entire conference all on your own, right? You're obviously going to have vendors in this space itself, for instance, that are going to do pretty basic things for you, but you may be doing some outsourcing for some more specialized areas. But it boils down to, is this something that is a gap that we have in our team? Is that something that we realistically can take on or should take on versus the benefits of just partnering with someone to get that out? And in a lot of cases, it could end up being actually more cost effective in terms of time and dollars to be able to do that. So you don't have to do it all on your own. I guess would be my parting words is, if you and your team do identify a gap, don't feel like you necessarily have to do everything on your own, right? Because in any discipline, to really deliver at a high level is just a tremendous amount of time. So to be able to go from that moment of identifying, hey, we have this gap, we need to deliver on X, and be able to very, very quickly, in some cases, actually get to executing and outputting on something is just a huge advantage. And you're going to may save yourself a lot of frustration in terms of trying to master something entirely else, which may be entirely new to you in your own background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for associations out there, there are true partners who can help you achieve your goals, as opposed to just always picking up a new vendor who can do a one-off project for you. Look for those people who are looking to build a longer relationship with you and who can become an extension of your team.
Awesome. Well, Christy, it's been another good one. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
No problem, Marcus. Happy to be here. And I'm 90% less sweaty than I was last time.
Thanks for spending time with us on Association Amplified. Until next time, take care and keep inspiring your members.